as well as editor Nicholas Monsour. We're going to get started. We're still waiting on RaMell and Jomo got delayed, but we're going to get started up here. I think you can sit at the end and they can jump up. Yeah.
You were joking?
I'm going over here.
Well, thanks you guys for joining me today. Congratulations on this film. I got to watch it a second time last night, and I don't know if anyone else has seen it twice. It's worth watching multiple times. I think you'd understand why a lot of things come into place. Here we go, RaMell Ross. Hello. Jomo Fray. You missed nothing.
Apologize. We had to eat. We hadn't eaten I think 2 or 3 days. Yeah, and so we will probably have to go to the bathroom very soon.
Yeah, I mean this is award season. You can't stop. You can't stop. I was just saying how much I love this movie. I saw it again the second time last night, and I was saying recommending it it's a film to watch multiple times. So much of it I think really clicks together on a second watch when you know what's coming. But to start, RaMell, I wanted to know, this very specific, interesting perspective that you use, the POV style shooting. How was that introduced in the script? How was it written into the script as a style element to it? And I'm also curious how it was received when you all read the script and saw that it would involve that.
Yeah, it's a good question because it's tough to not, in Q&As and in interviews and stuff, to not be particular about words, just because I think we use words in a very intentional manner. And so, it's so hard sometimes for people to hear, what are people saying for the POV? They're like, the POV style. I'm like, what does it have to do with style?
Right.
Like, what style? Like, this isn't, POV is one. What we believe that we were trying to attempt was like something that's more sentient, like we called it a sentient camera, right? And it comes from the idea of trying to make the camera an organ, right? Like the way that cinema and cameras, at least in Western logic and Western ideology, the way that it exists, it kind of fundamentally objectifies, right? Like it's a pointing thing. It's like separate from the thing itself, and like it seems like a conceptual idea, but when we talk about representing people, and when we talk about it replacing the perception of you perceiving a culture and a people and a place across time and across meaning, it becomes something that just feeds your stereotypes of it. And your stereotypes, like my stereotypes, are quite often programmed by the ideology of the culture that you're in. And the camera is a dangerous thing, also a brilliant thing, like it does that thing for memory, et cetera, et cetera. And so for us, taking the camera into the body of the characters, into Elwood and Turner, into the Dozier schoolboys, was a way to allow you to experience the kind of the gift of life that cinema can give to historical figures and to people in general. The Dozier School for Boys is a school in Florida that closed in 2011, which is wild. It was opened in 1900, closed in 2011, bodies began to be exhumed in 2013. And so the Dozier School boys are like my dad's age, like Franklin Leonard, who like founded the Blacklist and stuff. He was like, when he realizes that, that's kind of when he kind of really broke, that his father was essentially the same age as them. And so for us, in taking the writing approach, we're like, okay, if we're gonna take seriously the camera being in the body, then we have to make images, we have to write the script visually as if we're making meaning by what they're looking at and what they're seeing, which then allows the audience, if you participate, and you kind of let go when you're in the film, to be kind of locked into the way that they're making meaning through the world that looks at them in a certain way, and through the way they look at the world based on the conditioning of all those things. So it's like very much a deeply spiritual thing that I can get on a high horse about, as you can tell, and get kind of emotional talking about it, because I want people to realize so much that it's not like, maybe it'd be fun to tell the story, like, what if we just, it'd be so cool to just like have the character be the camera, It's like, no, Black people have always been objectified, have always been looked at. Most films and the logic of cinema history is not shooting from the Black community, it's shooting at the Black community. You know, it's not the universal. How do you centralize the gaze inside Black subjectivity in the way that literature is allowed to do, in the way that Toni Morrison has been writing all this time? Yeah, it's something that we all took like deeply, deeply, deeply seriously.
Yeah. Joe, from kind of the technical perspective, what were those challenges like? You know, looking beyond what exactly you wanted to accomplish, but how you were going to accomplish those things.
Yeah, I think as RaMell's saying, it's from the first conversation we had, RaMell said he wanted to shoot point of view. So then it really became a question of asking ourselves, okay, like what does that mean on a practical level in terms of filmmaking, and what does that mean in terms of, you know, simple things like what's a cut, what's a transition, what's an insert, like really what are some of these like real building blocks we have for cinema. So a lot of it was, you know, in prep, RaMell and I kind of twofolded that. We designed every single scene as a whatter. We knew that we were gonna edit, but we knew that entering the camera into the actor's space in this way, like, you know, there's a lot of artifice there, so anything we could kind of do to get that artifice out of the way. So a lot of the lighting was done with mirrors and broader and bigger light units that we pushed inside the space, so ideally there wouldn't be any stands or any lights on set to kind of try to build that out. And like in building those wonders, kind of like talking about, okay, every single tilt, pan, adjustment, movement through space we kind of wrote down. And through that process, we had a DSLR with us, and we would just test things out. We would, okay, let's try a hug. And it's like, well, this kind of looks weird. Maybe if we come in from the top and come down, that'll feel more natural. And like, you know, it was really just having conversations about cinema at an almost like subatomic level of like, okay, well, what is an establishing shot, actually? Yes, we understand it's a wide shot usually of a space, but like, let's break that down a little bit further, where it's like, okay, an establishing shot is primarily a wide shot that is about, if our protagonist is in the image, what is our protagonist's relationship to the space that they find themselves in? Is it a hostile space? Is it a not hostile space? What are the dynamics? And so then within POV language, since we can't have that shot, it becomes, okay, maybe the shot is it starts walking into a space and we come to a countertop, and it's about, what's the countertop made out of? Is it marble? Okay, that probably says something about socioeconomics of that space. And then we look down and we see, you know, a tattered side of our protagonist's shirt. And so that also tells us something probably about the socioeconomics of the person's body in which we inhabit, and probably the dynamic between how comfortable they are in this space and how comfortable the people are with them in their space. So like, then it's like, okay, well, again, so a lot of those kind of conversations of thinking more quantum level about cinema and then rebuilding, remodulating this stuff for our language. But again, that just came with a lot of conversations, watching a lot of movies together and kind of breaking those things down, and also a lot of camera tests where, as a cinematographer, you know, what RaMell was after and creating the sentient image was unlike anything I had ever done, and nothing that I had ever really seen in the way that he was describing it. So, you know, that really took our entire team, me, our camera team, our G&E team, kind of having to almost unlearn everything that we thought we knew about cinema, and then trying to just show up and execute the thing that RaMell was asking for, which is a very particular and bespoke thing. So towards that, it was like testing everything, testing story cams, testing remote heads and mimic mode on dollies, moving them through space, like, you know, doing handheld, and then feeling the difference between handheld that comes from your shoulder and handheld between your hands, of being able to quickly articulate. Feels more like a neck than if you're doing handheld with a camera on your shoulder. So yeah, it really just came from testing a lot of things. And RaMell and I and our colorist Alex Bickle, like sitting in a theater and like looking at it on a theater, all of our tests being like, okay, like what feels emotional? Like what's working here? And if something's working, like just raise your hand or say, I'm feeling this. And that kind of became a lot of what the project was again, like thinking about the emotions of these characters, these real boys moving through a real space, and thinking about their gaze, how powerful that is, when quite literally what they look at is the difference between life and death for them moving through the Jim Crow South. And then taking that and saying, okay, technologically, what are the tools that we can reach for that makes us feel inside their body in a present tense way. Yeah, that was really a lot of it was conversation and testing.